continue. There we go. All right. Now you should be able to say.
Yes, we're good.
And you want to do it locally, Emma?
Yes, please.
Okay, got it. All right, so we're good. All right, get out of there, little guy. All right. Oops, wrong way. Yay. Well, thank you both for being here and sharing this Thursday evening with us to take a little bit of a maybe 1 or 2 layers deep dive into Pluto. There are many layers with Pluto, and we're just going to get to a couple tonight. But the cool thing about this process that I'll share tonight is that it's repeatable for all of your Pluto transits, as well as outer planets up to Saturn, really, because they're all slow like that. So not as slow as Pluto, but this is something that you can definitely apply to your chart in a lot of different ways. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I will probably be looking a little bit over this way to look at my notes. So just wanted to let you know, if you see me looking away, that's why. So just a little brief introduction about why this particular offering is being presented right now. I have 6 aspects with Pluto right now in my chart. And I've had some other things going on over the past couple of years, like Pluto trine my ascendant. That just ended recently. So I personally have a lot going on with Pluto. And as I used my creative approach to working with the planets, I got this really clear message that this is so much more than just how you're working with it, me personally. Like, this is actually how you are designed to share astrology. And I'll talk a little more about that as we go on, because the particular transit that I chose to share from my chart tonight really has a lot to do with that. So we'll be able to talk a little bit about how you can look at yours and see like what's going on for you right now. So why Pluto? Well, Pluto is a really slow planet. It takes 248 years to go the whole way around the sun. So when it's slow like that, one of the things it gifts us with is time. And in astrology, the way that I work with it, it's very much about the long game. I don't do predictions or planning. There's all kinds of ways that you can work with astrology, and they all have merit. But the way I work with it is understanding what has happened in the past, what is happening now, and how that might influence or potentiate what is happening in the future. So working with Pluto is an ally in that way. Also, one of our teachers had this saying, if a Pluto transit is happening in your chart, then nothing else is happening. And that's true to a point. I mean, I think there's always a lot of dynamic things going on, but what I see is that Pluto sort of gives us this overarching theme of anything else that's going on in our chart. The shorter acting transits are all, oh boy, here comes doggy, are all subject to what Pluto has to say to us. So it's really helpful to know what Pluto wants us to know. And fun fact, well, maybe it's a fact, I don't know. Well, I guess that's to be determined. But the other day I was talking to my son, and he said, "Mommy, do you know about the Great Attractor?" And that's a point in astrology, and it's sort of near the galactic center. And he's like, it's sucking in all kinds of bodies all over the place, like celestial events. And so I looked it up, and showed him on the astrology chart, like where it was. And he was like, well, that's really cool. And he said, did you know that there are hearings right now that I don't know if you've heard about the Navy officer who's sharing information about extraterrestrials in the government.
Yep.
But my son was telling me about this, and I was like, he said, back in the 1930s is when they first started to have these exchanges, maybe we'll say, with extraterrestrials. And I said, well, fun fact, Pluto was also discovered in 1930. And he's like, really? Yeah. And he's not really into astrology, but the more questions he asks about things that he's interested in, he's able to see like the correlation. So I just thought that was a really cool story to share. And I guess we'll all just have to wait and see what more comes out around that storyline, because I certainly don't have the answers there. So there's a couple other things that I'll say really briefly. Pluto is also associated with Scorpio and the 8th house. So from an evolutionary astrology perspective, when we're talking about Pluto, the energy, the archetypal energy of Pluto, it also applies to planets or points in the 8th house and Scorpio. And so that's kind of just a thing to know right now. You don't have to do a lot with that. And because I checked your charts, and Emma, I did already check with Elena to make sure she was okay, but are you okay with me sharing your transit chart on the screen?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
All right. So whether you have aspects now or not, you can still use these tools, but I happen to know now that I looked at everyone's chart that's here that everybody does. So we're just gonna like look at one. We'll look at the one that jumped out to me first. So that's a little bit about my story with Pluto and why I'm here today. And now I would like to open this up. Everyone here, yay, has been in a red thread circle to one degree or another. So, so we're just going to take a moment and, oh, I don't even have the red thread, but here, we'll just pass the red thread around. So, so now that I gave that little introduction, let's just take a moment to drop in to our space, our shared space here, and pass the red thread around. And you can say a little bit about why you're here, what interests you about Pluto, what you're hoping to get out of this experience, or anything else that you might want to share. Passing the red thread to Keen.
Oh my God. When you were talking about Pluto being this overarching theme, and that sense that when there's a Pluto transit happening in your chart, that nothing else is happening. And the word that came through was overshadowing, right? But shadow not in the negative connotation, but in that place that we can't see into becomes more visible. And then we get to discover and work with and grow through those points. Like, more of this, please.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly excited to learn more about this approach in evolutionary astrology, of unpacking all that Pluto has to share. Yeah.
Thank you, Keen.
You're welcome.
You'll pass it.
Passing to Elena.
All right. So I think Pluto particularly is big about transformation. So as we were kind of looking at Pluto in itself, it's like, what are the areas that I'm being asked to kind of evolve and expand my awareness and knowledge. But also, I was kind of looking at aspects, and I don't really understand it all yet, but I saw an exact on August 13th. And I was like, if that's like a transit thing, like that's coming up, and what can I learn to kind of launch me into choosing more? But also, I've had the past week or so, I've noticed a desire to kind of slow down and rest more. So this whole time thing of take slower, more like a longer range goal type orientation. I've really been resting more. And so I'm wondering if Pluto's having some say in that. I don't know.
Love that. Thank you, Alina. You will certainly have ample opportunities to discover that with this slow progression.
So I guess I'm passing to Emma.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I come because I just love working with Angel and Keen, and I am new in this dabbling, deep dive with astrology. I have always known that these constellations and planets are organizing the energy in which we live. I just didn't have a framework until I met Angel, because a lot of the frameworks are very fixed in their mindset, and that just never worked for me. So I just very much appreciate this approach. My particular dance with Pluto has been a forever dance, as near as I can tell. Pluto sits at 1 degree in my ascendant house, in my first house. And so it organizes almost everything that I'm here to do, and explains why I feel like a force of nature every fucking space I go into. And my entire journey, I'm 51 now, my entire journey has been to learn how to temper that energy and that experience, and to learn how to wait until that transformative force, that fire, can become friendly and I can understand, and then communicate what may or may not, decide whether I'm going to communicate what needs to change and how to communicate it, so that it's received with the love with which it comes. So as a force in my ascendant, Pluto sits literally like just in Virgo, just in Libra. But my first house, the ascendant squarely rises in Virgo, and so those two energies are kind of dancing, and it's right beside Uranus, and so it's like a lot of like must change. And so but luckily they're both retrograde, which in this case tempers the urgency that transformative force kind of comes with. Of course, it's right next to Lilith. Fabulous. So yeah, there's as an organizing principle in this lifetime, this journey, Pluto has called for reckoning with self, and who is this body that I've been born into, and called to understand past lives and what I'm here to do and how to be of service. I'm not sure if that's really a Pluto thing, but that's definitely a calling, maybe the weave of all the other planetary things. So I'm just very interested, intrigued, and curious about how to work with aspects, because I noticed that, Elena, when you said you noticed that there's a really keen date coming up for you, like in August. When I read those dates and the aspects in this app, I can feel my heartbeat going. And at the same time, I was like, oh fuck, really? I've been dealing with this shit my whole goddamn life. Do I have to do more? Yes, you do. So I'm really, really coming to look for ways in which to ally with it and become friendly, and to soothe that urgent, that like, what the fuck feeling. So thank you for calling us.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. Oh my gosh, that makes me think we could also call this making peace with Pluto.
Yeah.
Or any planet, really.
Yeah.
I was just listening. Well, we both have been listening in separate areas to this podcast, which I'm going to put a reference to towards the end here, called Holes to Heaven by an astrologer that I really admire. And they were, well, it's two astrologers that are on this podcast, and they were talking about that thing that happens, the fear response that comes up, especially in readings, and especially, I mean, sometimes it happens for new people, but it will also happen for people who are new students of astrology, and they'll be like, oh no, and like all this fear comes up because of some of the ways the planets have been contextualized in this very patriarchal view of astrology. So it makes a lot of sense to slow down and really take a peek at what storylines are coming to the surface for us, even when it doesn't feel that way. So thank you all for sharing a little bit about how you got here today and what you'd like to experience. Now I would like to hear from Pluto, and we're going to do that. I mean, I'll just say I've been hearing from Pluto since I did this little workshop where in a group that Emma's in, Elena, we have a 13, it's called a 13 moon painting workshop. So there's a group of us that are painting together every new moon. And I got to share a little bit of what we're doing in the in-person group with Emma. And that kicked off like the next day, my one painting, this one, started talking to me with the voice of Pluto. And I was like, whoa, okay. So yeah, her too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, going.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's that way that I'm talking with Pluto, which is very much what you see here. Like this whole creation here is me working with, in this case, the aspects that Pluto's making to my Mars right now, one of the 6. So there's that way that Pluto's speaking, and then there's this way, which is in this book, Inside Planets.
Ooh.
By Elias Lonsdale. I will also have a thing that I'll send with the resources to you after this. I had an opportunity to have a reading with Elias a year ago, and he was like the first person that I've ever worked with who really, like, I felt like really got me. I've had not a lot of readings, but enough readings in my life to feel like, okay, yeah, kind of no, like not blown away or anything. Elias was different. He's a very cool character, and I highly recommend his work. So this is a little long, but I think you'll find it to be interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and begin a little story time with Pluto. The planet Pluto has the kind of infiltrating force that grows stronger the deeper down you go into the hidden places of shared feelings and physical densities. Therefore, the outer surface impact of Pluto is only the tip of the iceberg, and it is most appropriate to follow Pluto downward to the bottom of the world in 2 stages. First, following the negative Pluto downspin, and then on a separate journey tracking with the positive, penetrating force of Pluto. The negative Pluto is awesome and dreadfully, terribly big. It involves an antichrist power gathering deep under the earth in a concerted attempt to petrify the human being into a shell of utter negation. This force operates on conscious, subconscious, personal unconscious, and most of all, collective unconscious levels. Overtly, it functions by turning consciousness into an extraordinarily manipulative, controlling worldview, and then commencing an operational dissemination of that worldview. Yeah, Emma, when I read this, I was like, Emma's going to love this. Subconsciously, negative Pluto generates a debilitating tension and strain that, when made constant, becomes the basic shared current in decadent civilization. It sows seeds of suspicion, violence, and paralysis of will.
Ooh.
In the personal unconscious, negative Pluto turns the self against itself in a drastic sense, involving the bone-deep conviction that one is oneself the problem, making everything miserable for all others around. This force has become of late almost universal. And this book was written like a while ago too. Like
Yeah.
it's not even a current book. Finally, in the collective undersoul, negative Pluto is operating in its own element. There it forms a crystallized power network that attempts to take over all pivotal governments, businesses, and cultural forces, and to turn them into insensate power grabbers.
Fucking A.
Who are deeply tugged to devour all that they contact and instate hatred as the law of the earth. That level is truly chilling, satanic, and beneath description. So that's the negative Pluto. And I just have to pause a minute, Elena. Emma, can you tell her what your business name is?
Sensate.
So when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is the thing I have to read. Yeah.
It feels like it's the antidote to exactly the effect of Pluto in the decadent manifestation of politics and society.
Right.
And
I've got chills right now.
Yeah.
I have this feeling that there's a sense in which the negative Pluto is also doing us a favor by confronting us with this intolerable situation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Having to look at it, having to like almost like a Clockwork Orange at some points, you know, like having your eyes just made so open that you can't unsee. If you've ever seen that movie.
Yeah. Don't understand it, but yes.
Yeah.
Maybe watch it again.
All right. So now that we said that part of Pluto, we're going to go to the positive Pluto. The positive Pluto is almost unknown in astrological circles, thrown in pell-mell with the negative Pluto. Yet it comes from the opposite side and operates in a totally regenerative direction. On the conscious, overt levels, it is only beginning to make itself felt, manifesting as a holding of each one to purpose and inner will, directly in the thick of the collective chaos and suspicions.
Mm-hmm.
Subconsciously, positive Pluto forges a physical barrier to destructive invasions and renders one impervious to all negative influences. This shamanic initiation into the durable strength of staying with oneself is a remarkable power when mobilized, especially in building up reservoirs of unpolluted life force. On the personal unconscious level, positive Pluto becomes a distinct, palpable, utterly substantive, I always trip up on that word, substantial, remembering of who one is, why one came here, and most of all, precisely how to get on with one's core of destiny, regardless of conditions. This level is going to be much more powerful in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Finally, in the collective undersoul, where Pluto is at home, positive Pluto is a linking in to galactic powers that counter the negative Pluto Earth takeover attempt with a rekindling of the inner life, just when it was about to become extinct. But this inner life is not merely contemplative or meditative, or even a part unto itself at all. It is rather a core energy linking with evolutionary dynamics that recreate the human form, making it future ready and inwardly alive in a way never before seen in the earth. So that was a lot.
Made me think of the association with the Scorpio archetype and Kali.
Mm,
You know, it's this life force energy that fuels higher consciousness. And if you're preparing yourself to embrace that, then it's like, oh, this is fantastic. If you're resisting it, then it's a mess.
right. And we do both, right? We do this dance as humans. So we all get to have the experience of the resistance and what that feels like. And then hopefully the working with and what that feels like. So that's very much why the way I share astrology is oriented towards working with it in a way that sets us free instead of keeps us trapped in what most popular astrological culture will disseminate out there, because it's very much more that negative Plutonic. Same with Saturn. I really feel like this thing that I'm sharing tonight, I'm going to share with all of the outer planets at some point. Like, I'm really excited about that because they all have this same kind of story, you know, the negative one, the one that we want to avoid, and then this place where we can be like, yeah, I actually want to go there. I feel like that's why I'm here. So, and you probably have a sense of that, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have been drawn to this, like, if you weren't here to work with these transformational energies. So thanks for being here. Before we go on to the next part, that was a lot. So does anyone have anything they want to say? Like,
You're speaking my love language.
oh,
Yep.
you can make me cry, Emma. Thanks. Elena, anything? Or are you just like taking it in?
Kind of just taking it in, but also I didn't realize how potent Pluto was.
Well, we're gonna just dig a couple layers down.
Yeah.
We're not gonna even go the whole way. But now's a great time to discover that. Yeah.
I had this visual of the outer planets all being this, like, imagine we're looking to jump a train, like we need to go somewhere different, right? And of all the outer planets that are coming along, Pluto's going the slowest. Like, it's easy to jump on a slow moving vehicle. And
That's cool.
it just takes its time and it says, come on, I'll take you somewhere new. It'll be good. Right. And all the outer planets are doing that, but Pluto's really slowing down for us.
Yeah.
Come on, come on.
You might even say Pluto's reaching a hand out towards us, which can also sometimes feel like a slap, depending on where you're at. Yeah. So, some things that I hope for us to experience tonight is we'll identify where Pluto is now by transit. We will identify aspects between transiting Pluto and natal planets or points. We will visit the degree story for transiting Pluto, as well as some of your natal points. Well, one of them. And that's the part that you can do with everything. Like once you learn how to do that, you can repeat that. We'll do a little walkthrough of time passages just to make sure that everyone's comfortable viewing the interpretations offered and the dates. It sounds like you are, but we'll just double check on that. And we're going to cultivate a sense of wonder through simple creative practices. And we'll also create an altar of change. So when we're all done, we'll create a little something that just gets to the heart of what this relationship has to share with you right now about where you've been, where you are, and where you're headed. And those practices are all things you can continue to work with over time. And we'll just use plain paper tonight or whatever you have, if you have a journal or just plain paper or whatever, but you can go a lot of places with these techniques. And then I'll have lots of post-workshop suggestions to keep you going. So this, like I said, this is one of the ways that I work with everything in my life is an alchemical process for me, and art is the way that I transform myself and then leave an artifact of where I've been. So this is one of those. This is just a little note from my journal that I pulled out because it was the place where I put all of the transits that I have going on right now. So you can see there, when I did this, Pluto was at 29 degrees of Capricorn. Right now it's at 28, but that's not really a big deal. So you can see there, what I'm working with is my midheaven, my Venus, my natal Pluto, my Sun and Mars, which, if you can see, my Sun's at 15 degrees, 31 minutes of Virgo, and my Mars is at 15 degrees, 19 minutes. So they're super duper close. So anytime any planet is affecting my Sun, it's also affecting my Mars. So there's a lot that can be said about that kind of relationship in one's natal chart. And finally, Pluto and Jupiter are working together in my chart. So there's a lot of reasons for me to slow down and take some time to really pay attention to what Pluto is bringing to me. Have next. Okay, so we're going to start off with my charts, but then, like I said, I have each of your charts in here, so we will get to look at what everyone has going on. This chart is, let's see if I can make this. So this is a natal chart, which you've all probably worked with your natal charts. These things in here, that's transits, but it's not very easy to look at, is it? Yeah.
Do you mean aspect?
I mean aspects,
Yeah.
right? Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Keen.
Sure.
Aspects. So this is a picture of the relationships that are going on in the natal chart. It's a complex web. So, and you can't really make a lot of sense out of that without spending some time really taking things apart. And there are ways that I can do that with the astrology software that I have that omits a lot of things, so you can just see it in a different way. But I'm just showing you that to give you an idea of what a natal chart looks like by itself. And then over here, is that pulling that over?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the transit chart that I did for July 15th. So that was a little earlier in the month, and Pluto was at 29 degrees at that point. Again, not a big deal. It's at 28 now. It's a slow mover. But I want to bring your attention to in my chart. So your charts are going to be different, but in my chart, transiting Pluto is right up here at the top of my chart. So the first thing that I noticed when I started listening to Pluto being like, hey, you need to look at your transits, was, oh, Pluto's conjunct my midheaven. So midheaven in astrology is the 10th house cusp, and it represents our work in the world, what we're here to share in the collective as the work that we do. And that's kind of a big deal. Another interesting thing about this for me, although it's not really within orb, but it had been going over my north node. So Pluto, before Pluto was where it is now, it was dancing all over my north node, which happens to be in Capricorn, which is also associated with the 10th house, one's work in the world. So I've really been getting prepared, you could say, to I had a refining process of my work in the world, and now we're into sharing it, but in the early stages, this new way. So that's the aspect that we're going to go with for this experience that we're sharing. But just know that there's a whole bunch of other stuff there that's going on. So I would apply this same approach to all of the aspects. Does that make sense? Okay.
Mhm.
So let's go to the next slide. So this is something that I want to make sure everyone has kind of a handle on. Does everyone have their time passages app handy? Okay. So, I mean, you'll be able to see this just in your regular natal chart. That's where this is from. This is, if you pull up your chart on time passages and you just, hold on a second, let me get in here. So where at the bottom, it says chart, planets, aspects. If you go to planets, you will see something like what's on the screen there for each of your planets, and your midheaven will be at the bottom. So what you see on the screen there is what is on time passages under the planets section. It looks a little different than what it does on there. But you see that it doesn't have dates or anything because it's just a natal placement. But it gives information, which is a jumping off point. I really always encourage people, to question everything that you read about an interpretation. What resonates with you, what seems like, oh, I'm not sure about that, or I want to know more about that. Read a lot. Don't just take one interpretation and figure that's what it is. There's always so much more to learn. So I really highly encourage reading different interpretations of planets and points. But so this is one piece of that image that I showed earlier. This is one of the pieces that I put into that image. So when I was working with it, this is there as a way to weave in the information and what it means to me personally in a creative way. So,
So you put this in the under image
mhm.
with all the other things.
With all the other things.
And then you said, all right, all of you tell me something
All of
together.
you together, right? And another thing that I do when I'm doing readings, which just started recently, is I've been taking the natal chart into my digital format and creating a mandala out of it. So as I'm doing a reading for another person in my preparation, I'm also being with it creatively, and that's when the most amazing information drops in. So all that to say, like, there are many creative ways to work with whatever's going on in your chart that makes it so much more real and dynamic and alive for you. So we're going to do a little bit of that in a couple minutes. All right, so that is that. And it sounds like you're all, and correct me if I'm wrong, but pretty okay with pulling up your transits and time passages and seeing, you both talked about the dates. So this is the dates for my transiting Pluto conjunct my natal midheaven. And I put that down there. So looking at those dates, you can see that it's a fairly new transit up here. It was strongest, it began February 14th. So, and it's going to go through October 26th of 2026. So this is the really cool thing about working with Pluto transits, because there's an applying period where it's moving towards the aspect, the relationship, whatever it is, whether it's a conjunction, an opposition, a square, a trine. And you don't need to know so much about how to identify those right now, because time passages does that for you, but it is also handy to kind of be able to see it on the wheel. So this provides some good information. One of the things that I recommended in the things you can do after this is to find your dates and put them in your calendar. Like if you use a planner, Emma, you did that already. Just write them in there and see what happens. Another thing you can do is if you are a person who journals, go back to entries that you made. Like, let's say one of your transits is at the end. Well, you could go back to the dates that were happening at the beginning of the transit and see what was going on in your life and begin that dynamic of observation and correlation. Like, oh, I see this was happening. This is kind of what it means. What was I experiencing? Where did it take me? And where am I going? Right? So that's really powerful. It seems simple, but when you practice this way, just with yourself alone, and then if you really love that and you start working with the charts of the people that you care about in your life, it gets really interesting. But it's incredibly practical to have access to this information and to know how to use it. So that's the transit of mine that we're going to work with. And I pulled, after this, we're going to do a little creative process. So this is also from Elias, but it's a different book. This is Inside Degrees. You see that? I love this book. I love the way, I just love the storytelling aspect of his books. So even though right now Pluto is at 28 degrees Capricorn, which would mean we would read for 29, that is something I want to mention. The symbols that these are based off of. So there's a symbol for each degree of the zodiac. but you don't read the degree that the planet or point is at right now. You always read the next degree. And the idea is once it goes 1 minute past the exact, it's already moving towards the next. So the energy is always moving forward in this way. I also sometimes like to read the one before and the one after, just to get like a clear feeling of a movement. But that's just something to keep in mind if you do decide that you like working with degrees, is whatever it is on your chart, you read the next degree. So because when I was preparing this information, Pluto was at 29 degrees of Capricorn, we're going to read this, which is Capricorn 30. So I will read this to you, and I just want to insert this little idea that every degree of the zodiac lives inside of us. So we have a natal chart that has certain planets or points in certain places, but everything is in motion, and we are living here on the earth in the cosmos with all of these happenings. So while some of these are going to be more potent for us because they're in our chart, we all pass through all of these. So you could read this whole book and find yourself in some way in every degree. And I just think that's pretty cool, because what a unifying concept. You know, we all have our individual charts, which makes us who we are, but we're also all having this same shared experience. So I'm going to read this, and then when I'm done, I'll invite you to have some paper and markers or whatever you decided to work with. Keen's got his crayons. I have my markers here. And Emma, I know you're familiar with metacognitive drawing. Elena, do you remember when we just like moved the pen on the paper and just to see what comes up? So that's what I'll invite you to do after I read this. And the idea is just to notice what you notice. This is a little story, and it will probably spark something. Maybe a memory, maybe an idea, maybe something that you'd like to do in your life, maybe something you did that you wish you hadn't done. Just allow whatever it is to come out in the drawing process, and we'll just do it for a minute. And then I'll give you the invitation to turn over the paper and journal about, like, put any words that want to go with that. It's getting dark in here.
You want some lights?
Maybe.
That one.
I don't know, but that one's gonna not be nice.
Okay.
He's gonna put some lights on for my eyes so that I don't have too much strain. Uh-oh. Gotta plug the lights in first. Just give us a minute.
Really help. Go.
Take a sip of water.
One.
Boy, I get thirsty when I talk so much.
There's one.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
All right. So here's the story of where Pluto was on July 15th when I started working on this process. Blue morning glories growing up a tall trellis. Heightened ability to bring the greater self into action. The towering presence of the one who knows, informing each moment. A huge and formidable destiny dedication to bring all of yourself through into this world. A steadfast, adamant quality of soul. The prenatal resolve to work out all remaining karmas and be free. Intensive focus upon soul evolution. Purpose, will. You have something to grow into throughout your life. Ancient ways, unfallen heights, seeing through. Staggered by what you have taken on, ripening on the vine. Under massive pressure from within. The path and journey of ascension, with the body honored and the world renewed. Awakening and tapping the source for endeavors, projects, and tasks requires top-level clearance and the truest endowment of inward faculties to see them through and light up the world. So with that percolating around, just go ahead and spend about a minute just drawing out what's there for you right now. And when you feel complete with the drawing process, go ahead and turn your paper over and just give yourself a minute to free write whatever comes up for you. Just finish up whatever sentence you're writing now. We'll come back together for a moment. So so we'll do that process again for each reading, and it will be one for each of you of the aspects that you have going on. But I'm just curious if anyone wants to share now what it was like to go through that process of having like this story starter to kind of get things stirring for you, to have a moment to just let it crystallize, let it come into view, and then writing a few words. Anyone can go, and no pressure.
I was pretty happy with how unconsciously I moved through that
Do you want to show
drawing
it?
process. Hopefully you can see this. Like I reflected at it afterwards. I'm like, oh yeah, is that morning glories growing up a trellis? Abstract. But I didn't think about it. I just, here we go. And what came through was pretty sweet.
Thanks, Keen.
Thank you, Keen. I'm dying to share, but I don't want, I tend to get overly enthusiastic. So tell me, are you like dying to share? No. Mind if I go?
Go
Okay.
for it, Emma.
So that's the bilateral drawing that emerged. Can I read you the poem that came? This is how I can tell it's coming. It's not making sense yet, but
Yes, please.
fields of soul food from mud pools fired by Earth's inner source, fueled by photons, gifts of our sun, filtered through the constellations, firmament fabric wraps us around, surround, sound, feels like a sacred song, echoes in the wells of waters abound, and sways with the bend of winds of change.
Woo!
Yeah.
I'm feeling that, Emma. Thank you.
Makes me want to read what I wrote.
Go ahead. It's okay.
Thanks for the inspiration, Emma.
Go.
There isn't a need for more time or depth or stillness. The dropping in point is already dropped into, and you are carrying it around with you, living it in real time. Relax. You aren't going to miss it or miss out on anything. It's already happening underneath your very nose. Heart processor.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
I like it. Thanks, King.
Thank you, Keen.
Here's my drawing. Kind of hard to see. It was very forceful with these blue, like just shooting up. And it doesn't look like lightning, but that's what it felt like to me. It felt like this breaking through energy. And because I've also been working with this with my midheaven and Aquarius, I had already made some notes, so I'll just share those. The part of this for me is very much with a midheaven in Aquarius at 1 degree, which is the beginning of the archetype. There's always been this association with astrology, like an Aquarius midheaven makes an astrologer, a decent astrologer, among many other things. But that interpretation has always been with me. And I've also always resisted it because I delved enough into astrology to feel like what I was seeing out there as like the way astrology is shared didn't resonate with me. So I thought there was something wrong with me for a long time. And it took me a long time to come to the place where I feel like, oh, actually, I'm sharing it in a way that breaks free from this tradition, which is very much a Uranian concept. So when we look at Aquarius, we're also looking at Uranus and the 11th house. And then I realized like this idea that's been floating around for me is this way to be with astrology that sets you free. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it in a nutshell, what this transit is bringing for me. And so my writing was just more of that, just freedom from what has been, ushering in the new with all the support needed to see it through. And that we are all on this journey together. It's a collective experience. So that's mine. Elena, you can go and you don't have to. No pressure.
Whatever. I'm not a sharer, but okay. So I kind of did like sparks of the cosmos and intuition. I saw like a figure 8 for like completion, like constant movement and like heart soul work complete. And then for freedom, I get a lot of release from fires and like writing things out and burning them. So I kind of like made like this fire thing to like release all karmic past and contracts and kind of just have complete freedom to live in alignment with your purpose and with joy.
I love that, Elena. Yeah, so that little thing that you just did there is something that you can continue to work with outside of this. So you'll likely notice a theme will start to emerge as you work in this way, especially bringing creativity into any kind of self-gnosis approach. Like it will really start to take on a life of its own. And it sounds like that's already happening. And that's really cool. Yeah, right. It's like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. Okay, so that was pretty easy, right? Kind of fun, interesting. I hope.
It's kind of weird, right? In a good way, because it gets us out of that normal way that we think about things, and it puts us on the fringes. And we're like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah. So those are some of the ingredients from this one transit that I'm experiencing that I would put into a piece of artwork. Now, because I didn't do this one with my midheaven yet, I chose to share one that I had already done, which was Mars. But there's a little video here. Oh, well, this is Aquarius, which is also really cool, but I'm not going to read this one right now. Well, do you want me to read it? Yes, no. Anyone? I am going to read it, and that's right, because of what's going to happen in a little bit that you're going to see. That it's probably going to, I mean, it blew my mind. Maybe it'll blow your mind too. So it's Pluto is transiting my midheaven, which is at 1 degree Aquarius. Okay, so I would read for the 2nd degree, and here's what it is. A woman strolling in a garden. She is unaware that she is being watched by elves. So this is a natal placement that I have. The one I read before was where transiting Pluto is now. This is a natal placement, which has a little more weight and depth to it. We adopt a split screen mind when the outward frame of things seems so insistent that we must be reasonable and logical and make complete sense in a quantitative, functional way. But what happens is that the other side of our awareness, the outlawed side, gets very strong in the subconscious and stays alive. We can almost play off it in emphasizing our skeptical or worldly approach to things. But there is a joke to it. For you are aware of what you are not aware of. You are tuned into the very things you deny. This kind of edge hones the mind and the soul. It teaches invaluable lessons, not the least of which is to make way for the unknown while hugging the known close to you, knowing all the while how profoundly the unknown beckons. And that's really resonant with me and with my approach to life and creativity and all the things. So we're not going to do a drawing on this one because we did Pluto for me, but that's kind of cool. Now we're going to watch a little video of how I created. There it goes. It's real fast. If you blink, you'll miss it.
You play it twice.
I could play it twice. I just wanted to share this because this process is so alive for me. But this is how I take all of the information that we just looked at and bring it into a meditative.
Play again. Play it
again. Ready, set, go.
This is my favorite part.
When it morphs. Yeah.
When all the screenshots from the phone come in and then they go.
Mhm. Yeah. So this part in the beginning, this is from my painting that is now given the voice of Pluto. I can't stop it. But that little snippet in the beginning that's like red and yellow is this painting, one of the first layers, and it was the part where I abdicated my throne of long suffering. So that's a big deal, like to have that, to paint that experience for oneself, and that it came in with Pluto at this time for the oracle cards that I'm making is just a whole other level of wow. So I'm sharing that just to show you my process, not to say that this is the process that you have to do, but that when you attune yourself to using creativity as a transformational tool, it will show you how you can work with it. And that's pretty powerful. Let me get over here. So now we're going to look at Elena's transit wheel. And I'm going to make this a little bigger. And I'm going to say that Pluto's right here. Okay. Oh, one of the things I forgot to mention in the part where we're looking at the aspects, we're using, have you heard of orbs in astrology either? Okay. So an orb is the difference between excuse me, if Pluto's at 28 degrees in this chart, so anything natally that's 28 degrees would be exact, but we don't just look at exact, we look at a little before and a little after. So we would look at things that are anywhere from 25 degrees of Capricorn to 1 degree of Aquarius. Does that make sense? So that's how the orb works. It's like 3 degrees before the exact and 3 degrees after. The software does that for you in time passages. Do you have a question, Emma?
So it's 3 degrees before or after?
The exact.
So Pluto's at 28 degrees right here.
Oh, I see. So it crosses over into Aquarius.
Right.
Well.
So we would go, yeah, we would consider anything in here that's between the 25 degree mark and the 1 degree mark. Okay. So what I noticed as soon as I looked at Elena's chart was this. See this little circle with the X in it that I'm covering up? So that's a point. It's called the part of fortune. I don't work a lot with it. It's an Arabic part and it's a mathematically deduced point. They are cool. I just don't work a lot with them. But as you can see, that is at 1 degree of Aquarius. Okay. Do you remember where my midheaven is?
1 degree of Aquarius.
1 degree of Aquarius, right? So when I saw that, I was like, wow, observation, correlation. Isn't that neat? Elena's point of fortune is the same as my natal midheaven. These are the cool things that you start to notice when you work with other people's charts that it's just constantly blowing my mind. But because that's not a point or a part that I usually work with, I thought, let's go with Venus because she's hanging out right there at 2 degrees. So that's with an orb, roughly. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to work with, not only because it's Venus and Venus is retrograde right now, but also because I'm just going to tell you this, but it's not something that you have to like learn right now. There's something that you can look at. It's called phasal relationships in astrology. So anytime there are 2 planets or points in aspect, they're either in, to simplify, like an opening, like a developing a relationship or culminating a relationship.
So like they're moving closer to exact or further away from exact?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when we look at that in a transit, what happens is the natal point or planet is stationary. So then we see, okay, so if Venus was here and at some point Venus and Pluto were conjunct, they were together, but then Pluto started moving all the way around the zodiac and is now made his way back almost to a new conjunction. So this is kind of cool, Elena, because it means that you are wrapping up some business with Venus and Pluto in your lifetime. So when you said earlier you want to know like what are some things that I'm working on right now, that's a big one for you. And I didn't like, this is the thing, this will be your homework, right? So if you go into your time passages app and you look at, have to find you first. Oh, Lena, right at the top. Okay. So when you look at your transits, if you scroll down to the bottom, Venus, Pluto conjunct natal Venus is the 3rd one up from the bottom. So that gives you some dates. And it is telling you, it doesn't tell you when it started. This is also limited. There's more information that can be had with different software, but it's telling you that the transits are strongest starting in 2024 of February, but it's also actually happening now. But just reading that will give you a lot to work with. And that's only one of your transits. You have 1, 2, 3 Pluto transits going on right now. So Pluto is contacting your natal Mars, which is another interesting thing that I noticed when I looked at your chart, because you know how in this relationship, Pluto and Venus are coming to the end of a cycle for you. But with your Mars and Pluto, it's a new experience. Because if we look, wait, where's your Mars at? Your Mars is here and Pluto's up here. So it hasn't made it the whole way around yet. If you think of the moon phases, you know, You can watch the moon go from new and then to the first quarter to full. Like this is the same thing. The studying the moon phases alone will be really helpful in understanding more about how transits and phases work. But that's kind of cool. You're wrapping up an era of Venus, transforming your values, your relationships, and opening up this more like Mars kind of relationship. So that's kind of a lot to rest with, to explore. So what do you think about that, Elena? Is it confusing?
I mean, I kind of think it's cool that one thing's kind of coming to a close as one thing's about to begin. But yeah, I'm definitely going to dive a little deeper as to what all that means.
Mm-hmm. And you have time. Definitely have time on that. So we will look at, oh yeah, the other thing I noticed, oh, I already did say that. Okay, so I got all those things that I noticed. When you look at your chart and you look at Pluto in relation to everything in here, is there anything else that jumps out at you? Or are you just like, oh my gosh, that's enough? It's not a trick question. No, okay. I just want to give an opportunity if there's like, but what about this? So that's kind of enough to go on. So what we're going to do now is read, oh, before we get to Emma, we're going to read that degree number 3, Aquarius. So that's where your natal Venus is. Okay. A vast, oh, so by the way, we're going to read this and then we'll do the same thing. The drawing, knowing that this is Elena's natal Venus placement and that we all have a touch point with this degree of the zodiac because we have with all of them. A vast, ornate Hindu temple depicting hundreds of gods, living timelessly, cast loose from the rigors of karma, given free rein to follow the inner soul, you encounter the vast infinity of worlds which await those who let go. Experimenting with the innovative, the utopian, the fantastic, you are able to spin out magnificently, investigating and exploring. A consciousness that spreads itself far and free. No one thing more important than another. Everything blissfully equal. Possible futures. Staying open. You bear ideals and visions through dark times. Non-discourageable. Irrepressible. Tireless. Fabulously wealthy with the open possibilities of life. The great open-ended adventure. The known fades, the unknown beckons. So go ahead and just spend a moment drawing out what that has to say to you. So we drop in the little story arc and then you get to just be with it creatively. Whenever you feel complete with your drawing, go ahead and turn it over and just do a little free writing. All right. So just go ahead and finish up what you're writing there, and then we turn back into the space. Everybody ready? Okay. So we'll have a chance to talk about the drawings towards the end, but I want to make sure that we get to go through this process with Emma and Keen. Do you have a question, Emma?
Yeah, just that was based on the reading.
That
Two degrees.
right. So
Third degree of Aquarius, right? Which is where Elena's natal Venus is.
yeah. So her natal Venus is at 2 degrees of Aquarius, which means when you're working with the degree symbols, you read for the next degree up. So we read for the 3rd degree.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Elena, do you have any questions before we go on? Okay. Do you have any questions?
Elena, what did you think of that reading?
I was mind blown. I was like, whoa.
Right. This is why I love working with particularly Elias's symbols. They're drawn from the Chandra symbols. So that first thing that you see, like the morning glories, that's a symbol unto itself. There are many interpretations of them. But the way Elias does it
With story.
consistently blows my mind. Yeah. Yeah. Especially after what you just shared, Elena. Yeah. That was pretty cool. All right. So we're going to move on to Emma's transit wheel. Now, like my chart, Pluto is close to her north node. It's not exactly within orb, because is that your north node is at 5 degrees. So I didn't pick that one to talk about. But it is certainly something that you'll want to be paying attention to, Emma, because Pluto's moving towards your north node, right? So that's just another thing on the horizon.
Oh, yay.
But Emma, when I look at your chart, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can see how she's being set up in the most beautiful way to bring the fullness of her being onto the world stage, which is pretty cool. So if we look at again at that 28 degrees with that orb, you have Saturn over here, which you may already be aware of if you've been working with that. That's here, let me pull you up. That's definitely something that I would encourage you to continue to explore, because that's going to be a big help, and especially in the structures that you're building. But the one that I really wanted to focus on is Chiron. And this just was what jumped out at me when I looked at your chart. And it's quintile, which is kind of have you worked with that at all, Emma? Have you looked?
No, I just have it written down, and where did I go? Where is it gone? Where's it gone? A little bit in earlier. I was working with it, and then I have worked with Chiron individually, but not in relationship with Pluto, although the relationship makes sense. So
yeah. Well, you've been working on it, whether it made sense or not. But I thought it was another pretty cool thing to bring into this container, since when I looked at Elena's chart, I was like, oh, the phasal relationship is kind of a cool thing to talk about. So we can do that here for you too, and see that here's your natal Chiron and this big mess over here, smack dab in between Venus and Mars, I might add.
Yeah.
So that's a fun little natal experience. But remember I said when you're looking at the phasal relationships, if it's a natal planet, that's the point that you start at. So you're also in this culminating phase, because now Pluto's come the whole way around here. So you're closing out an era of healing. So this is an opportunity for you to really work with this in a creative way. And what's a quintile? I'm glad you asked. So here's the things that I looked at with yours, because I just thought that it was really cool. And this is out of a book that I also recommend. You can download this book, which is really nice. And I'll read this to you. The essence of the quintile, which corresponds to the number 5, is the creative assimilation of what has become known to the soul, either by way of its prior accomplishments or by way of knowledge, information, or accomplishments made by other people that the soul has been exposed to. In all cases, the quintiles express as a further individuation of the purpose by way of new, creative, inspired actualization. We can see that this aspect is not a very challenging aspect. It is, in fact, an aspect that harmonizes and aligns the soul with its purpose in a completely new and exciting way. Quintiles are truly one of a kind. It's in its own family, mathematically symbolized by 360 divided by 5, which is not the same geometry as the angular family, oppositions, squares, semi-squares, and sesquiquadrats, which are all harmonics of 360 divided by 2, 4, and 8. This might be a little much. But that, oh, and this piece down at the bottom, the intent with the quintile is to jump into the flow of the creative inspiration. The sparks are there. There is some sort of inspiration, and that inspiration can be actualized as deeply as the soul will allow it. And knowing you, Emma, I was like, yeah, I got to put that in here.
So this is the mystery school aspect, right?
Right.
Because you're taking the circle and
And
it's
dividing it.
by 5.
We'll be doing more of that, Elena, as the months go on in our like in-person astrology gathering. You know how we started with the circle and the cardinal points. So we're going to keep looking at that and all the ways it can be divided up, which is just really cool. And again, you don't have to like memorize it and know it. Just knowing that that's the framework that is used for all of the things you see in the app really helps ground it, right? Into something that you can see and experience as working in this beautiful container of a circle. So, Emma, before we go to your reading your degree, do you have anything you'd like to share about that quintile aspect?
No, it feels like ocean waves right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough.
It reads like one of Elias's
It does.
stories.
Yeah. Well, you'll notice most of the astrologers that I enjoy learning from have a poetic nature to them. They are also artists in some way. And I mean, that just speaks to my soul. So yeah, you're right.
Who's this by?
This is Ari Moshe.
Moshe.
Yeah. So let's look at Emma's Chiron degree. Oops. And where did, oh, it's one back. So we're going to read 10 degrees of Aries because here you can see the natal Chiron is at 9 degrees. So let me find my other book. There it is.
Want me to read? Do you need a break?
No, I like reading.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. So we'll do this same thing again, where we'll read this, and then you'll be invited to do a little drawing and a little journaling about what this means to you. You're going to love this. I didn't read it yet. A fat man in a state of reverie, smoking a hookah. Superior to the world. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I got to read 10. That's 9, but that's funny. Thank you.
Funny.
Yeah. Okay. So that comes before this one. Here's Aries 10. Roots of a tree entwined around the statue of a nude woman. Bondage and freedom sometimes go hand in hand. The bondage is being true to pattern, predictable, caught in habits and tendencies perpetually left to grow like weeds. The freedom is that as you meet yourself starkly in the midst of these old, tired patterns of behavior, you come into touch with a quickening flame of self-recreation, stimulated and forced by being at the mercy of the relentless patterns. This impulse to make yourself over is fervently strong, courageous, ready, and willing. The old stuff dies hard. You are therefore engaged in a pitched battle of a protracted kind between retrogressive and progressive ideals, impulses, and desires. Both sides are so impassioned and sharply intent that this becomes a knockdown, drag-out battle of wills. The atavistic, backward-leaning will feels immune to change. The visionary, forward-thrusting will feels moved by evolutionary forces never to give up. Eventually, the future prevails over the past, but not before scars and multiple traumas mark the spot of fighting for your life against an implacable inward enemy who knows it will lose and fights all the harder accordingly.
I have chills.
Yeah. So take that to the page for a minute. Whenever you feel complete with your drawing, just go ahead and turn the page over and give yourself a minute to free write. When you feel complete with what you're writing, just go ahead and return into the space. Oh. Oh. Keen said he's having fun. I am too. I hope you guys are having fun, as much fun as we are. So before we move on to Keen's transits, does Emma have anything that you would like to share or say? And you don't have to. This is just that moment of, well, what about this? Or, oh my gosh, that.
I'm happy to share what came up, but I don't want to bring heavy energy in if people are feeling vulnerable. So I think it might be wise to pass
Okay.
on sharing. But I have a logic question that will allow the energy of that to pass through me. When I first looked up the transits, it was a while back now. It was back when I was paying like per time I checked the transits. Now I'm just like, oh fuck, I've just got to buy it.
Yeah.
So when I first checked the transits, let me go back to that transits. It was July 17th. It must have been the day you first said you were going to do this.
Mhm.
And now Pluto is in different spaces. So I had Pluto's, yeah. So there were specific transits that came up then that are not in today's transit reading.
Mhm.
And yet I know they're going on still, and they'll be going on for a long time. So I'm curious how that works, how they choose which transits to share.
Right. So this is a limitation of the app software. And this is like when I run a transit report, I have two different programs that I use. One is the professional desktop version of Time Passages, and the other one is a different program called Solar Fire. So both of those have a lot more power of, like, when I print a transit report on there, it's a long
Yeah,
report.
it's like 50 pages.
Depending, well, it depends on what you
Parameters.
choose. Yeah, what you choose. That's why, like, one of the things, and I'll talk about it towards the end here, I was like, I need to do a mini reading just for Pluto transits and include all of those things. So you can pick a date window and it will show you like when it's hot and when it's not, but it's still active in your chart so that you don't lose track. So that's what I would say. It's just a limitation. This software is pretty amazing on the app, but it does have limitations.
Okay.
And that's one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I'm starting to get the hang of what we're doing here, but I'm a little, like, the map that I'm looking at on this phone doesn't look like that.
Doesn't look like, well, this is one that I pulled today, this morning.
Yep, I pulled that today. I pulled one today, but I don't. Just trying to make sense of it.
Is there like something in particular that is, are you talking about the wheel itself or the list of transits?
No, maybe. Could you lift it up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, so the degrees are all accurate. It just doesn't. Okay, sorry, forget.
It's a lot to look at, Emma.
On
Yeah.
the phone even more.
Yeah, it's a
Well,
lot.
I mean, even the aspects, the pattern looks different, and the orientation is different, and so I'm confused. Maybe I've set my phone up. Anyway, that's a technicality. So
Okay. Yeah, well, we could look at that like outside of here too, if you want.
Okay.
You can
no
do
worries.
that. All right, so any other questions before we move on to the next chart? No? Okay. So, there it is. So we did the quintile. Okay, so now we're going to look at Keens. And like, okay, so there's Pluto. So when we looked at my chart and Elena's chart, it was really easy to see an immediate aspect because it was right conjunct. Those are the easiest ones to identify, or conjunctions, because it's something that's right next door. Keen does not have anything like that. He also doesn't have anything that's directly opposite. So we have to go out a little bit further to see what's going on with his chart. And one of the thing that I chose to focus on in his was that the transiting Pluto is sextile, which is 60 degrees. That's a 60-degree aspect. And I noticed something really interesting when I did that. So here's transiting Pluto, and here's his natal Neptune, which is also at 28 degrees. So that's natal Neptune at 28 degrees and transiting Pluto at 28 degrees. So that's an exact aspect. And it's a sextile, so it's 60 degrees apart. So we move 2 signs. So we move back from Capricorn to Sagittarius to Scorpio. But then I was like, wait a minute, this Neptune here, natal, and transiting Neptune here. So there's this whole dance going on between transiting Neptune, natal Neptune, and they're both pointing at Pluto. Uh-oh. Oh, Elena's still there. I don't know what happened to my screen. So I thought that was a pretty interesting dynamic that he has going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you want to speak a little to that since you have been working with it?
Well, we're listening to this podcast, and there's a conversation between these two seasoned astrologers about what do they call it? Syzygy, right? Like when two aspects or two wave patterns converge. So here's transiting Pluto, and I've got the same degree of separation to my natal Neptune, and on the other side of that, the same degree of separation to transiting Neptune. So it's like there's this invisible line in the cosmos that's being struck by Pluto's presence, and on either side of it, there's Neptune.
Right.
I just thought this was a really neat arrangement. And personally, over the last 3 months especially, even the last month. The frameworks that I've been with a long time are being transformed in front of me. The way I am with them, the information that I'm seeking out, what's becoming available to me in the way I am being with the frameworks, like peering behind the veil in this way. And when I'm looking at the transit report, they're talking about a transformation of the way I am with my spiritual orientation. Check. Big check. The other thing I noticed was there seems to be a near square with my natal moon.
Oh yeah, that's a thing too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because here's your natal moon is at 1 degree. So I remember that with the orb, we can go back to 1 degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to have all my notes in one place. But yeah, so from 25 degrees to 1 degree. So that fits in there.
And my natal Jupiter is at 28 degrees.
29.
Is that?
I think it says 20. Yeah, 29.
Okay.
So they're both getting activated. So there's just like we all have more than one Pluto transit going on, which is just kind of cool. Not every, I mean, it's not like they're super rare, but not everyone in every moment has some Pluto activity going on, so that we're all here together and we all have that. It's just kind of neat. Another thing that's interesting about Neptune right now is that transiting Neptune is retrograde, but it's in the 12th house, which is the house of Pisces, which is the house and sign that it rules. So, and then his natal Neptune is in Scorpio, which is Pluto, in the 8th house, which is Pluto. So there's a lot there to be with. And that's how it is in all of these transits. It's something to unpack over time. It's not something to just be like, whoa, what did that? Oh, you have a moon in Scorpio. Oh, right.
Why would what?
Well, because there are these ways of describing, and they're not invalid. They're just not always helpful. But the moon is in fall in Scorpio. What does that mean?
If the moon represents our emotions and our mind, and it's in the sign of Scorpio, that's like, it's not as comfortable there as it is in Cancer, right?
Right, because
which would be the moon's home sign. So they say, well, this is an uncomfortable place for it. I mean, maybe. I've been here my whole life, right?
Exactly. Uncomfortable for who?
Right. But those ideas of what is favorable or more easy versus what isn't, I mean, it really depends on where you want to go, right?
Exactly.
I have a question, but I don't know whether now's a good time to ask.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. So with this arrangement where Pluto is in almost a equilateral triangle with Neptune, and Neptune's got a double dose of energy over here because it's in Pisces, and 12th house, which resonates with Pluto. But so too is this other Neptune that's sitting in the 8th house. So my understanding of wave dynamics is that if they both start in phase, then they'll hit and the peak will be synergistically felt. But if they're starting slightly out of phase, or very or opposite, then they'll meet and they'll cancel each other out completely. It'll be a flat C.
Mm.
So I'm just wondering how those energies are working, because I can see either one of those could be a situation sitting at Pluto from Pluto perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It could seem like nothing's happening, and it could seem like energy everywhere and then nothing.
Yeah.
And everything's in motion.
And everything's in motion.
It's like this awareness that I've been with over the past few months is like something comes into form through the creative process, and it's still coming into form. Like the process hasn't stopped just because I've stopped creating it. It's continuing to move, it's continuing to percolate. And yeah, this feels the same way. Like,
Yeah.
I can look at it and see where it was, see where it's going, and see where it is at the moment, all at the same time. That's what looking at this arrangement feels like.
Feels like for you. And your question is such a good one, Emma, because it points to that important theme, like the sort of the underpinnings, excuse me, of evolutionary astrology, which is observation and correlation, which again is why that over time, like, so you would look at this, like you're going to look at this and experience what information is here in a different way than Keen is. And he, as this person who is being his own astrologer, is going to observe, okay, this is the dynamic that's happening. Here's what it suggests, and what am I actually experiencing? And so this is how we enter into this dynamic relationship with the planets and the relationships that they are having with each other. It's like being at a fantastic dinner party.
Yeah.
Maybe even a masquerade party. I don't know.
Feels like a masquerade party in some ways.
Yeah.
And resisting that urge or desire to know, to have the whole thing make sense. Just try to, instead of knowing it, trying to feel as it's going.
Yeah. And it can be helpful to know on those days that we all have when we're like, WTF, you know, like if we have a journal that we're tracking these things, because Emma, the more you start to track, the more you start to see, right? And so when you do that with your chart and your life, then it becomes just really interesting. Do you have any other things to say?
I was thinking of that conversation on the podcast where they're talking about the research they're doing into like world history. So you look at, my life as a history, it's a microcosm. And I can look at my natal chart and look back through my life and see deeper meanings to periods of time. In the same way, they have researchers helping them look at events throughout human history and seeing the correlation between the repeated aspects or positions of particular planets. Like every time this happens, and it just blows them away. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is showing up that consistently.
Yeah.
And we don't have, hundreds of years of personal history to see it play out at that magnitude. But they said it's like peering through a portal and seeing all the machinery and the gears behind everything that's happening in reality and just going, oh,
like, oh my gosh, there's a plan to it all. And that's another gift of working with the outer planets from a historical perspective, because they're doing this like far, far back in history. It's just wonderful, the different kinds of focuses. I especially love the astrologers who take it into historical events. That's when you really start to see, yeah, there's something going on here beyond just a personal experience with it. Yeah, so that is out there. There's tons and tons of information out there like that. Maybe not tons and tons, but Mark Jones definitely, like, he's been doing this a while, and he has a researcher that works with him now. So they have brought in thousands of charts, did he say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna read the degree for Keen's natal Neptune. And we did talk about how that transiting Neptune is playing in there too. Where's that book? Here it is. Better make sure I have the right degree in them. So let me just go back and make sure I'm reading the right one. It was 28. So we're gonna read the 29th degree of Scorpio. And then we're gonna move right back into that drawing process and a journaling process. An umbilical cord. Definitely completely attached. But what you are attached to changes drastically. Each time it is to the source of sustenance. If at first a mother, womb, an elemental past, it can easily become later on a great teacher, a path, a journey. You are still thoroughly, personally hooked into the sweetness, the juice, the power. Yet as the levels shift, as the attunement deepens, you go from destructive enmeshment toward incredible openings. And as you learn to cut loose from each last thing and to move toward the next greater thing, you become adept in the rough process of inner soul work. You have an extraordinary aptitude for taking the most binding and heavy-duty circuits and moving into and through them, grasping hold of the guiding influence of ever greater circles of allegiance, leading eventually toward mutation and evolutionary breakthrough of the first magnitude. So go ahead and draw into that for a minute. When you feel complete with your drawing, go ahead and turn it over again and journal. All right, so just wrapping up with what you're writing now. And then we'll move on to our final creative act of the evening. So we've covered a lot of terrain tonight, and it's a glimpse of a process that you can hopefully continue to work on over time. There may be a theme that has arisen during the drawings and the writing prompts that we've done throughout the evening. So what I'd like to invite now is to make a new sheet of paper that sort of contains the heart of what this experience means for you right now. And the way that I'd like to propose we do that is to spend just a moment. We'll just lightly touch into our heart space as we make a heart on a piece of paper. So this is a process that we do in all of our heart parties, and it's pretty simple. You will just draw a heart, but you know, we can all make a heart. We all know what a heart looks like, and it doesn't have to look like the traditional heart shape. But the invitation here is to make this heart and feel the expression of whatever it is, the message that wants to come through for you now about everything that happened during our time together. So keep tracing over the heart, or maybe use different colors. Just we'll do this for about 2 minutes. And I really encourage you to follow the pen that you're using and allow it to do what it wants. And if it is comfortable, just keep tracing over that heart. And as words emerge or as a theme emerges, you can go ahead and write that inside the heart. So that is your message to take with you outside of this, that you can continue to work with. Does that make sense?
So, so just to be, I'm having a hard time translating. So we draw our heart rhythmically until words drop in.
You got it. Yeah. It'll just be a short practice, but this is something that you can continue to do. I like using hearts. I like using circles too. And Emma, I know you love using circles. It's just a way to trace a shape to allow deeper information to come forward. So we'll just spend about 2 minutes doing that. And when you feel complete with that part of the process, go ahead and return to the space. And we'll spend some time reflecting and sharing about the experience. So we have just under 15 minutes left, and I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to share a little bit about your experience, what may have come up for you, what you might be bringing forward as a result of our time together, or anything else you might like to share. In no particular order. And there's no pressure to share. We can I'll share mine. How about that? This is my heart. And the theme for me that keeps arising again and again is freedom. And I think it's because I'm attuned into that space of Aquarius energy right now with the transit that I'm experiencing. And emergence, this sense of emergence. And then also I thought about emergency and how they're different energies, but they are also similar. And how sometimes an emergency situation can lead to the emergence of something new. And then the other thing that came up for me, which I was kind of surprised about, was a sound that is heard and felt. But it wasn't so much like the reverberation of sound, but like sound, like of sound mind, of sound body, like that feeling of being sound. So that's my little heart's knowing that I'll be taking away from this experience.
Thank you, Angel.
You're welcome, Keen.
I can share.
Okay.
Emma, if you want to go, you can go first.
I'm
Same for you, Elena.
Go for it.
Okay. As soon as you started talking about this process, I had this little image in my mind of Pluto approaching me as a messenger.
Oh.
And of course, that messenger is associated with Mercury because it's so fast, right? But some messengers are slow. And what I had written on the last process was this idea of the hieroglyph. Like you see this piece of information, and when you're ready, then there's a deeper meaning to it. So I was thinking of this pivotal moment for me in my journey, where I came into a deep awareness in the middle of the woods. So it's that idea of looking into the woods and yep, there's trees. And then one day you're like, oh, there's this whole deeper meaning here that now I understand because I'm in a different place. So this idea of Pluto being a humble messenger, and he's just like gracefully, like this little flourish, and here you go, traveled a long way to give you this message. You got it. Really happy for you. But just the sense of some of the words that came in were valiant, unperturbed, deeply grounded in the earth, above the earth at once. And the other thing that came in was there's a gentle rain falling, nourishing, and it's not washing away anything, but making everything nutritionally available, like contributing to the sustenance aspect. Everything that's here laying on the ground, everything you're aware of, everything that's under the ground that you're not aware of, we're just percolating down through and making it all viable.
Like probiotics?
Like probiotics.
Thanks, Keen.
Elena, do you have anything you want to add?
This was my heart. I have some pinks, some pinks and some greens, some green vine interlaced in there. So basically, the words that came to me were freedom, adventure, bliss, expansion, new beginnings.
Those are some powerful words to have in your heart.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elena.
This is my heart.
You can almost feel it beating.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's got something to say.
always. Fractals within life, worlds within worlds, rhythms within songs, harmony within noise, sense within fragrance, safety within chaos, patterns within noise. What's possible beyond and without? And there's this kind of feeling of one of the readings, apples emerged. An apple emerged. And so it, don't know whether apples is yours carrying seeds of life, or is it poisoned by design? And from whence does your apple come? From whom and when and how? And maybe our apples are both, from poison transformed, new life. And so the last message that dropped in was fractals and fire, 1 degree shift, clarity to known and unknown, and poison might just be medicine. And
It just might be.
Like homeopathy.
The apple also reminds me of the mystery school signal when they would cut the apple crosswise and lay it on the table. And if they did that and you saw and you knew what that meant they were part of the mystery school.
It was like the secret knock, you know.
Right.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever cut an apple crosswise?
Yeah.
You know how it looks, right? That was the symbol that you could talk about the woo-woo shit, right?
Huh.
Yeah. Ah, well, thank you all for being here with me on this adventure, for being willing to explore a little bit. I know we're really we have 2 minutes left, and I want to respect everyone's time. So if you have to get off right at 9, I totally understand. I will send these suggestions to you probably tomorrow, but I just had some post-workshop things that you could continue to do to work with what we have done here today. And because this is a new body of work that's forming, I welcome your questions, your insights. We can maybe have a little dialogue, like a briefing after, whenever, like the offer is there. If you want to be like, hey, can we just talk about this one thing? Or I'd like to flesh this out a little more. I welcome that, because it helps me to build a better structure, a container to continue to share this information. So that offer is available. I will send this. So I won't go into a lot of this now because it's just a lot of information, but there are ways that you can continue to even deepen the dialogue. Like we scratched the surface with Pluto and a transiting planet, but there's lots of other places we could go with that. So I'll just share that.
Could you share the sort resources as well?
Yeah, that's the next page.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. So I'll send this to you too. These are the ones that I like. If you liked what you heard that I was reading tonight, I highly recommend to get these 2 books, especially by Elias, because they're like a pattern interrupt. If you look at most astrology interpretations, they're kind of like they're boxes, is what I feel like.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that to start, to give you like something to consider. But to go beyond the box, I feel like Elias's work is just beautiful, because it invites you into this mythic kind of adventure. So I highly recommend those books. Everyone already has Time Passages app. And I put in Astrology with Adam Summer, and I'll send the link to him, as well as Mark Jones. he's the one who wrote, Elena, I don't know if you got a chance to read the Natural Zodiac that was part of one of the emails I sent out, one of the early ones. So that's by him. He's a pretty amazing astrologer too. He's the one that is conducting that research that we talked about, the historical data bank. And then I'll also throw in this kind of cool article about the discovery of Pluto, just so you have a little more information about.
Could you
when-
could you also put that link to the online PDF that we read
to the Natural Zodiac? Yeah.
Oh, is that Natural Zodiac? Okay.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. I'll send it to both of you. Yeah.
Is the Natural Zodiac the one for like Zodiac for beginners? That one that we read about quintiles?
No, that's Evolutionary Astrology, a beginner's guide. I'll put a link to that in there too.
Thank you.
I really love Ari Wolf's way. I mean, some of his writing, like there's some little quirks, but I love him. And he also has a lot of videos on his website. So, I highly recommend checking out what resonates with you, exploring. Like it can be a lifelong love affair with yourself through the lens of astrology. And you can have lots of different dance partners as you make your way through that dynamic dance.
I like that description in the podcast about the orchestra. Like there are all these aspects, all these different archetypal energies, the arrangement of them, the houses, the aspects, the relationships they have with each other, and they're all emitting this frequency. And it's like an orchestra. It's a culmination of sound. They're playing together, and we're each that unique note that they are able to create.
So I'll send those things. And then the final thing I'll just put in here again. I think you both might have seen this. This is a mini reading. And this actually also comes with the whole transit report that I talked about earlier. So the one that we can run in the programs that we have, which is not the same as the app, gives you a lot more information, and that comes as a PDF. So if anyone's interested in that, this is how you can get that. So I'll send that along too. And that is the end of our time together today. Does anyone have any questions? We've been sitting here a long time.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would really go till 9, and I'm like, oh yeah, there it is, 1 till 9. Whew. I hope that it was enlivening, informative, inspiring.
If you feel like your brain's been rearranged,
That's awesome.
mine too. It's that's how it works. And then over time, little pieces will come together.
Yeah.
So if you're just like, oh my gosh, what just
happened to me?
Yeah, that's normal for me.
And me. Yeah.
I'm just digesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome,
welcome.
Elena. Thank you for being here. This is exciting.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I give us an avenue through which you want to hear feedback, or if you do, like, I heard you asking questions. My brain is not actually cataloging anything right now. So if there's anything you need back from us, please tell me.
Okay.
Because I didn't hear the request. So
I'll put that I'll send that tomorrow too.
thank you
Thank you for asking.
And thank you for the resources. And I am toast.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is what happens, and then it all settles back in.
It reminds me of that theme. So the glyph of Pluto it's like this, right?
The little,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the head isn't connected, like Venus and Mercury, you know,
I noticed
it's
that
a clear
too.
stick figure with a head, right? But
Yeah.
Pluto's decapitated and he's happy about it.
Oh, that's
Like
cool.
the mind is toast.
Yeah, so thank you.
I the mind is toast only because I have some seriously big energy that needs to go. And so this is like, I'm keeping a cap on it right now because this is not the time and place for it. So once we get off here, I can get out a few canvases and I can go to town.
I love that,
Beautiful.
Emma. Do you feel supported and
No,
safe?
no, not that you're not feeling not supportive. This is a supportive and safe environment. Do I feel that? Hell no. So I'm just going to go paint it out.
All right, fair enough. Ah,
So
well,
that's not on anyone else though. That's just where my body's at right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I honor that, and thank you for sharing that, Emma.
So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Night, everybody. Thank you for being here. And the recording will come in a day or so, but everything else will come tomorrow.
Cool.
Right. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. There.